Welcome back to another round of With Just 15 Defeats, the heavyweight boxing show from the UK. I'm Teekosey. Thanks for joining me once again. I just want to invite you to check out my channel, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Leave me some comments. I really want to hear from heavyweight boxing fans from all around the world for some good debate and discussion. So in this video, we're going to be discussing Luis Ortiz's latest knockout victory, this time against Tony the Tiger Thompson. We're going to go through the breakdown as we usually do. In this fight, there were 6 rounds, so let's just have a quick rundown of the rounds, and then we'll have a bit of a discussion afterwards. So, just quickly. Just looking at the two guys, they're of a similar size, but Tony Thompson, yeah, he weighed quite a bit more. He's a lot fleshier. By all accounts, it took this on a late notice because Ortiz's guys just could not get an opponent. And I would have thought that Tony Thompson was paid pretty handsomely for this fight. But to be fair to him, he's a game opponent. He's not scared of anyone, so he was willing to put it on the line and take on this game challenger who's rising up the division. So as I say, he was a lot more fleshier than Ortiz, but then he's always had that kind of look, whereas Luis Ortiz, slightly lighter. Well, I say slightly, he was about 20 pounds lighter, but he was pumped. He was pumped, muscular. Just a beast of a guy. As I've said in a number of my previous videos when I've been discussing Luis Ortiz, he's incredibly wide. He kind of reminds me of if you're watching a kid's cartoon and they put in like a superstar boxer cartoon. He kind of looks like a cartoon boxer, or even like a WWE wrestler. He looks like the sort of guy that you could imagine being in WWE. The dimensions are there. The dimensions are there. Pretty crazy physique. But let's move on to the breakdown. So the breakdown of the first round. We saw straight away how the fight was going to be. Ortiz was pumped and cocked. His fists were ready, and he was pressing forward whilst Thompson was laid back, leaning back, and he was just pushing his hands out, trying to create some space, but Ortiz was going forward. And what we saw was the first knockdown that came in. It hit him kind of on the ear, and he dropped down. But he got up. He was incredibly slow to get up, but he seemed okay. He didn't seem like he was. He didn't seem like he was in any danger of being stopped. To be perfectly honest, Ortiz did try a few sustain attacks, but didn't really connect with any real flush shots. So Tony Thompson managed to survive the round. We moved into the second round, and Luis Ortiz, he was pressing, and he was persistently looking for power punches in this round. So there was low output, but the punches that he was basically trying to take Tony Thompson out. Didn't really manage it. We moved into the third round, and this was actually a reasonable round for Tony Thompson. It was probably like 50-50, to be honest. Both guys had about the same amount of input. Thompson seemed to be growing in the fight, and he was able to connect with a number of punches, and he looked fairly comfortable. And Ortiz was within his range. There wasn't really much power behind these punches, but he was getting to him. He was able to get to Ortiz, but right at the end of the round, just as the bell was ringing, Ortiz landed another big bomb, and Tony Thompson dropped. He dropped, but again, he managed to get up, and he survived. He survived. Again, he didn't look particularly phased by it. He got up and he was ready to go again. We moved into the fourth round, and for not a really that exciting round, to be perfectly honest. Now, it was all Ortiz in the round, but Thompson never really looked in danger of being injured or damaged or stopped or anything. He was fairly comfortable. Whilst he wasn't really doing a great deal himself, or he was able to evade most of what Ortiz was doing. And we moved into the fifth round, and kind of similar. Ortiz wasn't really able to land anything that was that devastating, and we really saw Tony Thompson. He was putting himself in front of Ortiz. He was standing in the pocket. He was putting his face out there. There was a couple of silly exchanges where Thompson's hands were right down, and he was laughing, he was looking at Ortiz, and he was basically saying, let's just see what you got, just knock me out. And Ortiz didn't really go for it. He didn't take the bait, where I think probably if he had taken the bait, he probably would have knocked out Thompson, and it would have been a bit foolish of him to do that, but that's how it played out. And really, Ortiz should have done more in that round, even though it was another Ortiz round like the ones before. We moved into the sixth and final round, and sixth was pretty similar to the fifth, exactly the same as what I've just said, but it was ended with a big overhand KO or knockdown punch, and Thompson just dropped to the deck, and a second after he dropped, you could see in his eyes that he was fine. He was fine, as fine as you could be after taking a massive shot to the side of the head and dropping down. But he seemed okay, and he straight away pointed to his leg to say, oh, yeah, my leg's injured. But then he started getting up, and as he was getting up, the referee had pretty much had enough, and he called it off at about an 8 count, to be honest. He waved it, and you kind of... to be perfectly honest, I think Tony Thompson quit. I think that's what happened, because when he got up, you could see in his eyes, he was walking around, he was fine. Whether he did have an injury or not, that'll come out. But he didn't seem to be phased. His head was clear, and I think he probably thought, I've been knocked down 3 times. I may or may not have hurt my leg. That's it. Let's just take a slow rise to our feet and let the referee stop it, or we'll see what happens when we go to the corner. So Ortiz gets that win. It's a stoppage win. It's another stoppage win. But where does it put Luis Ortiz in the mix? Now, as we've discussed in a number of these videos, that we've got this WBA tournament whereby Ortiz was scheduled to fight a range of people. I think originally it was meant to be Ustinov. Be interesting to see whether the Ustinov matchup does actually happen, because, as I said, I think in the WBA breakdown kind of preview tournament video, that I think that Ortiz and Ustinov would actually be interesting, and it really would test Ortiz more than a lot of fights that he's had up to date, because of the size and kind of like the style matchup. But if this fight here, the Tony Thompson fight, has been an alternative to that, we have to see what the WBA say, and he moves on to kind of like, in theory, the winner of Klitschko and Fury. We'll have to see whether that gets made, because, to be perfectly honest, I have a feeling that if the winner of Fury Klitschko will probably fight Anthony Joshua if Anthony Joshua wins. I just have that feeling, and if not, I also have a feeling that Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder is a possible fight for this year. So whether or not we'll see Ortiz in with any of those guys shortly, I think it's debatable. It really is debatable. But could he beat these guys? Everyone's getting on the Ortiz hype train. I haven't. If you've watched my breakdown video of his fight against Jennings, I think Jennings was definitely in that fight until he was stopped. He wasn't winning the fight, but he was in that fight against Ortiz, and Ortiz managed to stop him because he's just got insane beast mode power. But whether Ortiz can do it against these bigger guys who have a little bit more to them, they're a bit more forward thinking, we'll have to see. But there's definitely some really interesting matchups with Ortiz because of just what he brings to the table. And like we said, it's been said that a lot of the opponents that were scheduled, there was about 5 or 6 guys that were offered the fight before Thompson took it, and they didn't want to know. They wanted big money because the risk is so high. So we'll really have to see what happens. But Ortiz, yep, he's top 10. He's top 10, but again, for me, I haven't seen enough to tell me that he is above the other guys in the rankings. He's just not there yet. He's just not there. The other guys have done other things, or we know they're capable of doing much more. So we'll have to see what happens in the coming weeks, whether something gets announced for Luis Ortiz as he's the interim belt holder of the WBA. They may decide just to put him up against Lucas Brown just to unify that single strap. We'll have to just wait and see. But whatever happens, I think Luis Ortiz, there's some interesting fights coming for him in the next year. So thanks once again for watching this video, and I've been Teekosey. This is with just 15 defeats.